Good morning. It is Sunday. It is 9:15-ish Central Time. And something 15-ish wherever in the world you are. My name is Tracy Brown, and you are here with me, the Sunday morning Science of Mind class, hosted by CSLDallas. So, just in case there's anyone who, for the very first time, has found us, every Sunday we pull out the Science of Mind textbook written by Ernest Holmes, and we go through the book and talk about what does it mean and how can we use it in our lives. And once we get through the bulk of the book, not including the indices and the glossaries, we go back and we start over again. So today we are going to be on page 66 in the middle of the chapter that is titled In the Beginning, God, which is chapter 1. After the introductory chapters. So, I hope everybody had an interesting and productive and fulfilling week. We celebrated the summer solstice this week and had an opportunity to reflect on the change of the seasons and the fact that all of life expresses in cycles, and that we can give meaning to those cycles just like we give meaning to our lives. So take a deep breath with me. And with that exhale, we're exhaling everything that's happened before this moment. And with the next inhale, we are acknowledging a fresh start right here, right now, exploring, expanding and evolving life. And so it is. So let's explore what Ernest Holmes had to say. So again, this is in the chapter In the Beginning, and over the last couple of weeks, 2 or 3 weeks, you have had some introduction to that, and Dr. Petra did a great summary and actually an unpacking of the creation story from a metaphysical point of view and from a historical point of view. And when she comes back next week, she is going to do the second creation story and do the same thing. But we're going to start with describing the infinite on page 66. Describing the infinite. Any account of creation, however brief, implies, first of all, there is a universal intelligence which is omniscient, all-knowing. We call this intelligence God. In philosophy, the word reality, with a capital R, in philosophy, the word reality is used. In science, the word is principle with a capital P. The reality of philosophy, the principle of science, and the God of all of religion all have much the same meaning: the nature of the universe in which we live. We, in Science of Mind, describe it as God, spirit, reality, truth, absolute intelligence. End quote. And if you are involved with Science of Mind or you study metaphysics, you'll know that in addition to those 5 labels that Ernest Holmes writes at the end of that paragraph, you will also hear us refer to this nature of the universe, as love, as beauty, And so if the word God doesn't sit comfortably with you, you can substitute any of those broader words: spirit, reality, the universe, love, the universe. It's okay to substitute as long as you are using the word to mean the same thing. The nature of the universe, the invisible and visible expression of life. So you don't substitute a different word and make it a smaller thing. But if you have a different word that works for you, that is encompassing all of life and the way it works, then anytime you hear me say God, especially as I'm reading, and this chapter is titled, In the Beginning, God. So if you feel free, don't get hung up on the word God. Okay, next paragraph, absolute intelligence. We believe in an absolute intelligence because such an intelligence is manifest throughout the universe in which we live. Wherever we look, we see it at work, whether it be the intelligence in the atom or the convolutions of thought operating through the brain of a Socrates or an Einstein. Consequently, we state our first principle as an absolute intelligence. It is impossible for thought, whether it be philosophic thought, scientific thought, or religious thought, to deny such intelligence. We believe in an absolute intelligence and an absolute consciousness. We are in the universe and we are conscious. So we have no reason to believe that we have reason to believe that consciousness exists. Okay, I'm going to stop there for a minute. So in these two paragraphs, or really three, the idea that God is that universal intelligence that has created all, not just all people, all forms of life, all ways that life can express, is really critical here because, again, we're in chapter 1. So there were some introductory chapters that gave summaries. What God is, or the principle of life is, how it works, and how we can use it. And now as we are diving into the formal study of science of mind, Ernest Holmes is rolling out the creation, the creative, what is it that has created all of life, and he is in the definition stage. This whole chapter is about defining God, defining infinite intelligence, defining the reality of creation. So keep that in mind, because depending on how much exposure you've had to science of mind or metaphysics in general, or in some ways different religions as well, some of this may seem really basic. And I'm a fan of going back to the basics every now and then to really get grounded in it. And every time I go back to the basics, what I find is that I see, hear, or understand something new or something at a deeper level. So, describing the infinite, Ernest Holmes gives us permission to use different words and explains why. And now we are affirming that this infinite intelligence is absolute, and it is the foundation of all of life. So, we believe in an absolute intelligence because such an intelligence is manifest throughout the universe in which we live. And in the second paragraph, the last sentence, we are in the universe and we are conscious. So we have reason to believe that consciousness exists. Now I'm going to continue reading, and I'm going to invite you to start thinking about, okay, what about this doesn't make sense? So you can ask a question, or thinking about, what example do I know, that have I experienced that demonstrates or proves this to be true? Creation means the giving of form to the substance of mind or spirit. Repeating, creation means the giving of form to the substance of mind or spirit. Spirit being all and only, there is nothing for it to change into but itself. Therefore, it, spirit, is the changeless, within which must take place all changes or manifestation of itself. The infinite of itself is formless, but within it are contained all the forms which give expression to its consciousness. Repeating, the infinite of itself is formless, but within it are contained all the forms which give expression to its consciousness. Spirit is the limitless, within which is all space. Spirit is timeless, within which is all time. Creation and experience are eternally going on, but any particular experience is measured by time and has a beginning and an end. Now, I can remember the first 10 times I read that. And I was like, wait, what? God is formless, but it has all forms. Spirit is limitless, but it has all space. Spirit is timeless, but inside of that timelessness, it has all time. And I remember going, okay, I don't know about this Ernest Holmes guy, but he seems to be a little confused, or at least he's confusing me. Like, how can something be formless, limitless, and timeless, but the world is operating in form and time and space? So if you're struggling with that a little bit, it's true. And over time, in the human experience, we can begin to understand there is something beyond our time and space that allows our time and our space to actually be our form, our experience in the physical. And then there's only one more paragraph in this section, so I'll read that and then we'll turn to questions and comments. In the beginning of any creative series, there is absolute intelligence alone, pure spirit, all-inclusive, everywhere, infinite. This all spirit could not have the impulse to move unless it was conscious. Therefore, quotation, spirit is the power that knows itself, end quote. The account of creation in the Bible, which says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, does not refer to a time when there was no creation, but rather it refers to a time to the process of an eternal creation, which is a continual manifestation of spirit. Not a single moment, but a continual manifestation of spirit. An eternal creation is proved by the fact that we must suppose spirit to be conscious intelligence. And there can be no conscious intelligence unless it is conscious of something. Spirit is conscious and must be conscious of something. Therefore, it must always create. What a glorious concept is such an idea of an eternal creative principle. There is no stagnation in spirit, nor should there be any stagnation in our idea of spirituality. To be spiritual is to create. The spirit is alive, conscious, aware, and active. There's a lot in there, and we can talk about it. So I am eager to hear your comments, your questions, your explanations of how you have made this make sense to you, and both online and in the room. So Ryan, can you give us some instructions, please? Good morning.
Good morning, Dr. Tracy Brown, and good morning to everybody here in the room and all over the globe. And I hope your mind is just as melted as mine. You start thinking about those quandary thoughts and you go, okay, Sunday morning, have I had enough coffee? But for a lot of people, they're watching us all over the globe, so they might be able to ask some questions faster, right? So as a part of this, I know that you said this is an engaging conversation, and we'd love to hear from your feedback and comments. And for those who are here in the room, all you need to do is just raise your hand, and myself or the iconic Richard will help you out with a microphone. And for the folks who are joining us online via Zoom, you can simply hit the raise your hand icon, and I can bring you into the room that way. And or you can always put your questions and comments inside of the chat, and I can bring those into the room. And the same goes true for those on Facebook. Please feel free to put your questions and comments inside of the chat, and I'll bring that into the room as well. And you know, Tracy, as you were talking about this, something funny came up for me. I was thinking about the relativity to size also demonstrates time, because to an atom, time is very different, space is very different. So you also have that in the mix of it as well too, and science proves that time and space is relative to size.
Absolutely, because size is form, right? And you have to have a different experience based on that.
Yeah, so I'll read one of the comments that came here into the room, and feel free, don't be shy. We love to hear from you today.
We have a raised hand in the room, so read the comment first.
Okay. It says, this is a reminder to me that nature of existence is an expansion.
Richard.
Whoa. Okay, there we go.
Okay, comment, sorry.
Yes. All right, I'll restart that. This is a reminder to me that nature of existence is an expansion, and as a species, we naturally feel joy through creating. And usually when we are not in harmony, we feel the sense of depressive state.
Oh, I love that comment. So the nature of life is creating, and we are always creating. So as I'm hearing that, you know, we create something we like and we feel joy, we feel pride, we feel excitement, and we're also creating the things that we don't like. So we're creating it by the choices we make. For this moment, we're talking about the human experience and our individual experience and our collective human experience as a community or as a society, as a global species. you know, the things that we complain about or that we're depressed about or frustrated about, we created those too by the laws we made up or the choices that we make to pollute or, right, all of the things, you know, global warming, poverty, racism, homophobia, all of the things with the changes in the climate or people not having food in different parts of the world or not having clean water. We created that too. So it really is important as we think about creation to recognize that even though when we tell the creation story, and we are very clear that in infinite intelligence creating life, let there be light, right? Creating the fishes and the seas, creating all of the things are in the sequence of creation. The phrase right after each creation, each part of creation was, and this is good, or I call it good, or God called it good. That is true. And in the human perspective, we choose what to create. And then we label it whether it's good or not. So, but the process of creating is the process that is innate. Creating. So I love that comment. Right here in the room. Please remember to say your name so people can know who you are.
Hi, my name is it on?
Yes, it's on for the people online
Okay.
to be able to hear you.
Okay, hi, my name is Julia, and as I listen to the reading, it just reminds me of the intriguing story of creation. And when I think back, when I started studying science of mind, it was to a point was challenging, but to another part of me already knew. And so when I listened to the reading, so it's not even a question, it's a comment of saying, well, if God is all this stuff and we are made from him, then we are the same stuff made of him.
Yes.
And so when I think about it, it's like I can see myself out of this body in this beautiful energy, wherever that is, being all that I am without even realizing it, just being who I am. So my question, my challenge today is how do I become more of that in this physical body? Because really, when I think about it, and this is what I remind myself when I'm having a really bad day, I have everything I need, so there's goodness, there's joy. What is stopping my joy? And sometimes I get an answer, and sometimes I don't. So it really, when you have those kind of thoughts, it's really a reminder that you have to make those changes. You have to turn from the stage that you're in, take that responsibility and get to where you want to be because you've made that choice.
So, Julia, you bring up several things that are interesting and important. So I don't want to lose what you said, that when you first started looking at the way life is from a metaphysical perspective and you were learning the philosophy, that there were some things that you knew but you didn't know, but then you knew you really knew it, right? Like, well, I already kind of intuitively know that, but I didn't know I knew it. And that is that combination or that link between, yes, the source of life itself, all of life, the source of my life is, your life is the same source. And sometimes when we easily, from a biology standpoint, we realize we carry and reflect the biological DNA of our birth parents genetically, right? Their DNA is in us. But the DNA of the spiritual creator of life is in us as well. It is us. So when we are thinking about prayer and a lot of our spiritual practices, it's one of the reasons that we affirm that there is no separation between ourselves and that which created us, because all of the attributes, all of the qualities of the infinite intelligence are already within us. But from a human perspective, we also have been allowed to have free will. And so whether we recognize it or not, whether we use those qualities or not, they are there waiting for us to discover them and incorporate them into how we engage with our human experience. So to the question of how do I live that more when I am in this earth suit and I am engaging with the physical world. And it's practice. It's really why we say we do spiritual practice. The one caveat or caution that I am always reminding myself, and I invite you to remember it as well. Some people think, well, if I'm really spiritual, then nothing uncomfortable or bad or dangerous will ever happen because I've done my prayers and I've meditated every day for 35 minutes first thing before I even talk to anybody. I did it right. Why did this happen to me? We don't teach spiritual practice to escape the human experience. Because you are in a human body, living in a physical world, you are going to have human experiences. We teach spiritual practice because that is what will help you navigate the human experience. So if what's happening isn't working, based on the choices you made a year ago, and you realize it's been a year, it's not working, make a new choice and start going in a different direction. You could do that the next day, you could do that a year later, you could do that 10 years later. We are able to influence the direction of our lives, and we are able to manage the impact of whatever happens by applying spiritual principle, intentionally and consciously being in alignment with spiritual law, and by making choices. Okay, so we've got one more in the room and then we'll go online. Say your name.
Hey there, Tracy. This is Nicole Bett. How are you? So never mind, because anything that I wanted you to elaborate on, you already have. But let's get into it a little bit more.
Yes.
So I feel like I was way too old when I finally was introduced to the concept and the vocabulary word co-creators. We are co-creators in this human experience. And I was like, whoa. And this happened at a spirit retreat that I was attending, where one of the daily activities, in several of the activities actually, was for everyone to gather into a nice circle. Everyone stand in a circle. And there was always that one little co-creator, not exactly making a circle. They're kind of standing in the middle of the circle, and they're not turning around and looking behind them and seeing that, oh, I need to step back a little bit. or you know, there are those co-creators that are not contributing to this harmonious plan that we have sometimes for everyone to talk for 2 minutes, and they ramble on like for 20. That's my problem. But it's all source, and it's all a universal expression, and it's all somehow meant to be. But I have to ask myself, do I want to be the cautionary tale? Do I want to represent that thing that we don't all want to collectively consent to as a consensus? We all agree that certain things are definitely good and certain things are definitely bad. It all just comes down to paying attention and mindfulness. And, you're right. Like, of course you're right. But you make a very fine point, a very important point to remember that it takes practice. It takes mindfulness and paying attention to your surroundings and how you contribute to creating a moment. What you're wearing, how you're sitting, how you're talking, how long you're talking. It all matters. And by the way, you're just so naturally in harmony with the beautiful artwork behind you, and you know it, don't you? But your dress is bringing this very autumnal, fall, cool jewel tone artwork in the middle of summer, wearing a beautiful summer dress in coordinating colors, and you see how Tracy is bringing harmony to this moment, to this atmosphere, to this created image my eyes are receiving.
Wow, Nicole. So I don't know which one to start with, but I'm going to start with this just so I can get it out of my head. So harmony, you use the word harmony more than once. So harmony is a spiritual attribute or quality that means all things that are different from one another play well together. It doesn't mean we're all the same. You can't have harmony in a symphony orchestra if all the instruments are the same instrument. If everybody is playing the clarinet, they're playing the same thing, but you don't necessarily have harmony. Now, could you say, you have an alto clarinet, you have a clarinet, and you have some people play the high notes and some the low notes. If you're picky, you could do that. Don't be picky right now. So you have harmony from a symphony orchestra because you have the violins doing their thing, doing the best violining they can do, and you have the people who are playing the saxophone play the best saxophone they can, and you have different types of drums, and they're coming in when they need to come in, and you have all the different instruments being their best self or being played in the best way possible in harmony. So the same thing is true with people. We want people to bring their uniqueness, and you have harmony because you're actually utilizing, recognizing, valuing, and utilizing the strengths and the creativity of the different people to create a harmonious outcome. Now, the challenge of that, whether it's at a retreat, trying to create a circle, or whether it is in the metropolitan area of Dallas-Fort Worth, or whether it is between countries globally, the challenge with creating the harmony that really already exists, the harmony within which we were created to live, the challenge with that is that we have all this individual free will, and people do know they are co-creators, or many people just think, I am a creator. Many of you have been following along the last few weeks with our Sunday celebration service talks, where we have been talking about the 4 stages of consciousness. And in stage 2, which is that stage where we begin to take responsibility for our lives, and we are making conscious choices, a lot of the times in creating, based on the choices we make, we're only looking at our individual desires or needs. Unless we are consciously, as Nicole suggested, consciously and intentionally recognizing that we are creating for our individual life, and everything that we do individually is a part of the collective. And I'm really glad that you mentioned that both individual and collective, because in science of mind, specifically, but in New Thought generally, and metaphysics, a lot of people learn some of the surface stuff and they're like, oh, I'm going to use this. I'm going to have my great life. I'm going to go get a new car. I'm going to be creating in my life a perfect relationship. And I'm just going to get my stuff. And, you go create your stuff. And you go create your stuff. And you over there, like in California, you go create your stuff. That's your responsibility. I'm only responsible for me. No, everything that we do individually is part of the collective as well. So we are responsible for all of it. All of it. Okay, we've got 2 more hands in the room, but do we have anything online? Do we have anyone online? Hey, y'all on Zoom, what you got to say?
Yes, we do. Majori, you want to go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question or comment?
Yes, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, good morning.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, I had typed it into the chat, so I'll just read it, my question. Can you speak about the differentiation between consciousness and the subconscious mind, or between the unconscious and the subconscious aspects of our mind? For example, Holmes says that the consciousness can never be unconscious, and that whatever we look at, we see consciousness at work. So it would seem to me that Holmes is acknowledging that even those things that we look at in the world that are destructive or chaotic is part and parcel of consciousness, or the creative intelligence, or God. He mentions the brain of Einstein as being intelligence at work, but not the brain of Hitler. And yet both of these extremes exist in our world. Can you speak about the seemingly contradictory notion? Is Holmes tapping into paradox?
I love you.
I love you too.
And I love that observation and question. So this comes up a lot in our classes when we're diving in. So Holmes and science of mind. Consciousness is the cause for what we do and for what we see and for what happens. So in that particular passage, or like when you refer to using Einstein as an example of consciousness, the same consciousness is being used or was being used by Hitler as well. Because as human beings, we are creating that expression of our thoughts and our choices. Where most people get confused is that in the world of psychology, the definitions for consciousness, subconscious, unconscious, may be a little bit different than the way that we are using them from a spiritual point of view. So our consciousness becomes, or we talk about our consciousness as our choices and our thinking, and we also talk about we are conscious of, right? We choose to be intentional about, and we are conscious of our thoughts. We monitor our thoughts, and we will tend to use the subconscious. For those of you who are familiar with the teaching symbol, and if you're not, just hang on a minute, but if you're familiar with the teaching symbol, the subconscious is the invisible, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. It means it is operating in the invisible to deliver on that which we have set an intention about. So if I set an intention to be the most powerful person in the world, and that means that I'm going to hurt some others or eliminate groups of people, the subconscious is the invisible, really the subjective, that it is subject to the intention I set. And it doesn't have any way to choose or decide. So you will hear us use subjective when we're really careful with our words, and you will hear some teachers and speakers and some in writing see subconscious, meaning the subjective. But in psychology, the subconscious is more like, you know, it's kind of, it's driving you, which has the same meaning, but it is not exactly the same thing. Now, to that question, is Holmes talking about paradox? The answer is yes. I don't even have to go into that. We often realize that the things that seem exactly opposite and impossible to reconcile, both are true. And that is the paradox of many spiritual principles or spiritual lessons, that both are true, or what I would say to translate that is that in the human perspective, they seem like opposites. And so from the human perspective, we see them as opposite, and how can they both exist? But from a spiritual perspective, there's nothing outside of God. So God doesn't see it as a paradox. Spirit doesn't see it as a paradox. But our human analysis and our human limitation, especially since we've been trained to think in a binary way, right or wrong, up or down, yes or no, to us, it seems like a paradox. Ryan. We've got here and here in the room. Tracy, okay.
Hi, I'm Darlene. I like to keep things real simple for me. And what stands out for me in this reading is the infinite of itself is formless, but within it are contained all the forms which give expression to its consciousness. That, for me, I choose today to be the foundation of my existence. That far too long I have used my humanity, because being unaware of my consciousness, to be unconscious. And so what I'm grappling with today is how, if all forms are within the formless, it's giving me a new perspective in how I entertain or visualize everyone, that everyone is acceptable. Is
Yes.
acceptable.
Yes.
And so when I find myself in an adverse situation, I'm not thankful for situations that I'm uncomfortable in, but I know within it there is something that I can be thankful for, because of my consciousness,
Yes.
and my ability to choose. And so with that, with knowing that, I come back to myself and accept the fact that I am intelligence. I am conscious intelligence, and today I have the right, because of that, I have the responsibility to choose.
And I am consciousness having this experience. I'm the universe having this human experience in the world. And I think we can get one more in all the way over here on the right, but we're going to have to do it really, really fast. Really, really. Oh, no? Okay. Well, I was going to say we're going to have to be really, really fast because we have like 2 minutes. 2 minutes. So if any of this interests or intrigues you, I highly recommend that you go back to page 66 or even really go back to page 63 and read the first 3 pages of this chapter, In the Beginning, God. And if you missed Dr. Petra's explanation of the creation story from a metaphysical perspective 2 weeks ago, then you might want to look for that. All of the recordings for the Sunday morning class are on YouTube in the CSLDallas channel. And then please join us again next week where Dr. Petra will dive into the second creation story, and then we'll continue this conversation. As you go through this week, please remember that you are an individualized expression of the infinite intelligence, and use that to make your life and this world a better place. Have a great week, everybody.